It's really nice about a homeschool schedule. We are a very active sports family. All of our children play sports of some kind. We almost never are dealing with homework in the evenings or the weekends. So when we talk about 4 to 5 hours of school for like my son, who's an 8th grader, he is getting all of his schoolwork and homework done in that time block. So that is something for you to be thinking about too, as far as how do I buy back some time into my schedule. It makes our family's life a lot easier. In terms of socialization, the best socialization comment I have ever heard came from Karen Lehman's husband when I told him that we had decided to homeschool, and I told him that my boss asked me, "Aren't you afraid you're going to ruin your children?" And I thought, wow, this was a really hard decision to make. And his fear was they're not going to be socialized. And Joe Lehman gave me the best thing I've ever heard. He said, yeah, people ask me all the time, aren't you worried about your kids getting socialized? And he said, I am. We are socializing constantly, and I wonder, when are they going to get their schoolwork done? And it is so true. We fight to keep our days at home because there are so many groups, volunteer things that you can get pulled into, but also just expand your definition of socializing, because we have beautiful relationships with neighbors that I would have never had as a child and known how to interact with, seniors or older adults. And so it is just amazing getting to cross some of those boundaries and do some of those things. And I'm going to keep it flowing and run on to Courtney from here.
Same. I like to have a little bit of quiet time myself. I'll just simply add that nobody else said. I used to get up when the clock said 5. That seems crazy now. Why bother with that? But again, I would say this is a different year for everybody. We have people in our co-op, we know, don't plan things before 9, why would you do that? And then we have other people who are like, we're starting at 7, right? So do whatever works for your family and your natural rhythm, and if you don't want to set alarms, don't set alarms. Again, I use Alexa in every kid's room that they know to not come down until 7:30. If they do, they have to watch the news for that little bit. They get all their own breakfasts, they get all their own lunches. We kind of reorganize the kitchen to make that accessible, so like Leanne is saying, to really practice some of those life skills more and more. They do a job kind of early in the morning, then go up and get dressed, and we aim to start schoolwork around 8:30. When my kids were really little, we had one of those cutesy charts, and I took all this time to print out the pictures and laminate them and put them in order with the times and the little clock hands. That lasted 2 weeks. So now we structure blocks of time, and again, the kids see right from the first day of school, here's everything you have to do on Mondays, here's everything you have to do on Tuesdays, and I let them generally pick, and I would say the same, I'm available for teaching in the mornings, and then in the afternoons, it's the other life stuff that we have to do, with bills and house things and car things, doctor's appointments, and I will just kind of add that, again, with Rebecca specifically, I do very, very little teaching. There's directions in the book. The first thing I always say is look for the teaching box. Read the teaching box. Did you read the teaching box? What did it say? What do you have to do? So I'm really there just kind of for questions, except for at our co-op when we're doing hey, let's do a group reading, and now let's participate in this project together, and you need to know this information, or let's discuss this information. I'll also add that my husband is the one who puts the kids to bed every night. Yay, husbands! And he reads to them aloud from a more advanced book that to expand vocabulary and great story structure and whatnot. So that totally counts as our literature, right? And he asks them questions and has them imagine things. That's probably 30 minutes of his bedtime routine every night. So he kind of takes that on. He was our co-op chemistry teacher last year. So again, I'm you find a great time to read chemistry with the kids and preparation for the chemistry class that week. So getting parents involved in a different way who might work in the evenings is also a great way to kind of spread out the responsibilities and the memories. He is really, really glad that he's had these times of making memories. We've done classes at the Chippewa Nature Center. I would say just in general, especially in times like this, just ask. Like Leanne said, come, bring your children and I will teach them everything. Who's going to say no to that? The tennis center also, I came to them and said, I really want to play tennis and do a class. I have 4 mom friends who will do it, and hey, we'll bring our 12 kids. Can you give us a class on Tuesdays at 11? And they said, sure. So it can't hurt to ask, and people, that people want business, and then you get to do things with your friends, and kids get to do things with their friends. So just throw it out and ask. There's a great gymnastics class down in Freeland that we've done together. And again, when you see homeschool class, don't think, oh, it's only for those weird people. It's really nice that all your kids can participate at once, all ages. So, and Center for the Arts, multi-age group, Chippewa Nature Center, multi-age group. Again, I know the Center for the Arts is coming to us with a trip, since they had some flood damage at the Heritage Center. they're coming to us to do a trip and, working things out. So everybody's being really flexible and accommodating if you're maybe asked nicely.
Can I add something real quick?
Sure.
Just a short one. Something that Courtney just said. I want to emphasize, have a schedule. When your kids are in public school, the school provides a schedule. First you go to this, then you go to that, then you go to that. It just helps kids know what to expect. If they know what to expect, the day flows so much smoother. So it doesn't have to be micromanaged. You don't have to have every minute. You can do blocks of time. I think that works great. But something, so they can look at it and go, oh, I know what the future's bringing. Okay.
Thank you. It's helpful. We had some questions about participating in public school activities, sports, music maybe, or taking a class in public school, assuming we don't know what it's going to look like. But if there are sports, it's public school. Ben, can you tell us kind of what the requirements are for some of those? And then we'll have Courtney talk about her experiences as well as a homeschooler partnering with public schools as well. Yeah, go ahead.
So the neat thing about this is that, we have to think about homeschoolers are in a box and public schoolers are in a box and private schools in a box. There's a lot of neat opportunities out there where you can kind of mix and match your child's education if that works best for your family. And so ask about public school activities. If you are I'm going to go back and review, this is like way back at the beginning. So there are two different options for how you homeschool. Most of what you hear here and most of what is done is called the pure homeschool option, the one where you don't have to inform, but as a courtesy, you could inform your local school district. What do they have to do? Both those homeschoolers and those who are under the non-public school option are entitled under law to access to non-essential elective courses at public schools. For the pure homeschool option, that's in your resident school district. So if you live in Midland, you are entitled for your kids to take, if you want, music or art or PE or foreign language. Those are options available to you, and your school district should accommodate you. If you're taking under the non-public school option, you actually technically can avail yourself of those services in districts where you're not even the resident through the Schools of Choice program. Now, the district you want to take it from would have to be willing, but they often are. So ask, and you'll find these more options available than just living inside the box you might think you have to occupy. Sports, I'll just briefly say, if it comes to intramural sports, it fits under the same situation as elective courses. Your district should be accommodating. If it's interscholastic sports, the high school sports, basketball, football, these all fall under the Michigan High School Athletic Association, the MHSAA. And the MHSAA sets its own rules, and school boards, when they agree to participate in it, sign up and say, we're going to play by your rules. And when they play by the rules, that means your child has to be enrolled 66% or 2/3 of their credit-bearing courses towards graduation have to be in the school they're playing for. So that is something you may have to think about as far as if high school athletics are something you're looking at. But I can tell you that local homeschool groups, we have a basketball team for boys and girls right now. And if there's enough interest out there from other families who want to start other sports through the homeschool network, I'm also not in my role at the Mackinac Center. I can also help you with that. So those are things to think about.
So as I mentioned earlier, we had a son placed with us through foster care, and while he was in public school, he had an IEP. So just if there are any parents out here whose children have an IEP, we did have to fill out that non-public school form that the speech therapist just put something in front of me because, again, she was not very experienced with it either. So I had to fill that out, but he has been able to continue his weekly speech group ever since he's come home to homeschool with us the last 2 years. He was not able to receive the resource room, and when I inquired more about that just in preparation for this talk, it's because that was more of a school program rather than a public service to the child. So he gets his weekly speech group, that's all. Also, when my daughter was in 5th grade, we asked if she could be in the band over at Woodcrest, and they said yes, and she's moving up to the Jefferson band. Again, I would say, we can't take anything, at maybe book value because everything's so up in the air here, but it can't hurt to ask. And every time we have asked if they can participate in something, they have said yes. We've also taken a strings class. This will be the second time some of my kids have enrolled in strings over at Calvary Baptist Academy. And again, they have a lot of just fee for service, fee for per class classes that you can sign up for.
Since Courtney brought it up, I will add here to give some context. Their families use the non-public school option so their son can access the auxiliary services. So if your child has special needs and they have an IEP, as a homeschooler under the non-public school option, you have access to some services. All children are entitled, if you think your child might qualify as having a disability, every child, no matter where they go to school, the local school district is entitled to provide the services they call Child Find to help diagnose and point you in the right direction. Things like speech and language therapy, counseling, psychology, social worker services. Under law, the district is supposed to provide those on the same basis to non-public school students, and that can be a homeschool or registered as a non-public school, as they have to provide to the public school students. There are some services, Courtney alluded to, that they're not obligated to. So that's something you need to explore and look at. But there are some services, mainly the ones I described, where they do have to provide those.
And yeah, you could talk with Courtney more about her experiences with that if you're interested later. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, so we still have some really great content to get through. Leanne, we really want to hear from you about your experiences as a working mom, so take it away.
If it's okay, I'm going to take 30 seconds too, because I got some different information from one of the middle school principals just a couple of days ago who was talking about sports. So for those of you who do have middle schoolers who are interested in playing school sports, they had told me that it was a 50% enrollment rate, that they need to have half of their classes through an option that is being, classes that are being taken and graded by a public school teacher. So I think there's a lot in flux still. I would just echo that now is the perfect time to push and ask if your kids are in sports. It's such a strange year. Who knows, maybe we can even get the MHSAA to shift some of their policies this year. That'd be great. But so anyway, I just would say advocate. When I talked to her, she was saying, we're doing everything we can to try to figure out how to work with parents and families this year. Even we mentioned possibly, she said they're still looking into this, maybe students being able to take core classes still, even online through the academy, which I had never heard before. So I just want to say, keep asking. I think the more that you contact your districts and talk to your principals, the more leverage there probably is for some of those options to happen. Okay, as far as working parents, this is a huge topic. I think it's probably easiest if I talk to some of you individually afterwards, but like I mentioned, I worked full-time. I was asked what was my schedule like, how did I set my schedule, and then strategies for how to approach your employer if this is something you think you want to do. So in terms of how I set my schedule, I started with my work lens first. When did my direct reports need to be able to get a hold of me, and when did we have standing meetings? And the same thing for the people leading me. When did they need to be able to get in touch with me? We had a lot of transparency with them. I mean, they knew I was a homeschooling parent. Luckily for me, when I took the job and they were open to working with that. And then my day was similar to what Courtney mentioned in terms of blocks. So I would get up and work early. You can probably imagine this, right? Work before the kids got up for a little bit. We would do school pretty much through the mornings. And in the afternoons, it's really kind of sad, but my children, even as young as 5, knew that from like 1 to 4, you did not bother mom, because I was typically on conference calls or I was doing other things with remote staff. And so that time was sort of blocked off for me to work. We did a couple more subjects together, and then after school into the evening, normal family routine. A lot of times I was back on my computer again for a little bit in the evenings. Okay, so the first thing I would say is to really think about how you can use your time frame there, but then I also did a couple other things that were very helpful. One was we had a friend who was looking for a part-time job. I hired her to be at my house a designated full day and a designated half day every week so that I could leave the lesson plans with her, and she implemented what my kids were supposed to do or just made sure that they were doing the things they needed to do. She didn't feel comfortable teaching every subject, so that was fine. I knew that was something I could double up on a different day and pick up. I would really recommend, if you think you're going to do something like this, to look into that. And it may be that there's a run on newly retired homeschool parents who may be, interested in helping other families out. But the other thing I would throw out there is you would be amazed at how qualified some preteen and early teenager high school students are, homeschool students are, because many of them have been asked constantly to help with their younger siblings, while a parent is working with someone else. And there are probably 6 of them running around here tonight who are helping with registration at the tables, who are highly qualified to do something like that. So think creatively about how you may want to engage some kids to even just keep your children occupied for an afternoon while you work. The strategies for approaching your employer. The temptation is always for you to probably start thinking, how do I need this to work for me at home? And I would strongly encourage you to flip it and say, what does my employer need in order to feel good about this, right? So what are the priorities of your job that have to keep being met? What are the things that really can't drop? How can you assure them and show them a plan for how you can still keep achieving the things that they need to have done? In some cases, it may be that you're suggesting to them that a certain project that was high on the priority list maybe could be waited on for 6 months. In other cases, it may be that you need to be flexible with your hours and be available to them more than what you're thinking. The other thing I said was that you may want to look at how you get your hours in. You could ask about shifting your workday. If you're not opposed to working like an 11 to 7 and your job accommodates that, that would give you the couple of hours you need in the morning to get a lot of things done with your kids, or vice versa. Can you go in early and tackle some things? You also can look at, again, if you have really younger elementary students, you can do a lot of your homeschool in 2 hours in the evening if you choose to do that, or use your weekend days. There's a lot of flexibility there. Depending on your financial situation, and I know this is a little bit stickier for some people than others, you could also look at, could you pitch to your employer that you want to go from full-time to 30 hours a week for the duration of the school year, or maybe go to half-time only for the duration of the school year? If that seems too overwhelming to them, I will tell you that our heavy school months really only are, October, November, and then probably 4 months in the spring. So maybe you also look at doing something where it's a little more staggered, a little more concentrated. It's going to be, again, very individual to you. The one caveat that I feel like I definitely need to say, again, because I have accountability from my husband out there on the grass, is that working full-time and homeschooling full-time does not always work depending on the phase of life that you're in. And I do not want to be responsible for wrecking anybody's home life, okay? So there is a reason why a year ago I stopped working full-time. When my kids were very small, I could easily do it before or after work. When they're older, I may have more flexibility again. But in these middle years where they need me much more involved, we were getting to the point where I knew I could not do service to their education and keep working full-time, as much as I loved what I was doing. So consider the ages of your kids, consider how many children you're going to be trying to help, and also think about your own energy level. You can probably tell this one could pull it off, right? Some of us are not cut out, and our energy level is just taken up with going through kind of the day-to-day stuff as it is. So again, I'm happy to talk with people about more individual situations afterwards, but those are some high-level things to be thinking about if you're thinking of continuing working and trying to add homeschooling into your schedule.
Thank you, Leanne. Okay, we are running up to the end of our time. I want to be considerate of all of you who are listening so patiently. So we were going to talk about homeschool in college, and Karen and Ann, and I apologize, I'm gonna cut your question, your discussion, but if you do have high schoolers and you want to talk to them about any high school stuff, just know that they have kids who are really successful and in jobs and have graduated college and, have gone on to do real life, real world stuff and successfully. So we're going to do like 30-second bonus round question here, just from each of you, just a really quick snippet for 2 questions. First, we'll see if we get to the second one. Depends on how quick you talk. First is, how difficult is homeschooling, and what do you do when you get stressed? And I know we could actually talk about this for a really long time, but go ahead, Karen.
I would say take breaks. Meeting with other moms on park days kind of rejuvenated me and made me see that it wasn't just me that was going crazy with the kids, but it was other people too. And it gave me encouragement and ideas to go on. And just meeting with other homeschool moms in the same time.
I would say homeschooling is It requires dedication in the sense that you, the parents, have decided we're going to do this year. And if you're firm and convinced that that's what you need to do, even when your kids are going, why are we doing this? At least you know. And I think if homeschooling were too hard, nobody would do it for more than a year. And obviously that's not the case. So you can get into it. The thing I learned with my kids was, as far as stressing, not so much from the mom's perspective, but from the kid's perspective, when my kids get stressed or frustrated because they don't understand something, and then I feel frustrated because they're not getting it, and why aren't you understanding it? And then they're feeling frustrated because I'm frustrated. So we just put it down and walk away for a while. Sometimes it's for 15 minutes, sometimes it's for a half hour, sometimes it's till tomorrow. Whatever you need to do something fun with your student, or let them go do something fun. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it today. So.
Yeah, I would echo both of those. I would also say sometimes I scream. It's usually when I'm in the garage. I try to limit that as much as possible, but there are just those days. And the other thing I would just double down on is, if you want your kids to kind of discover this for themselves, there is an episode of a show called Brainchild, and it is on motivation. And my son watched that and realized that if he was having a hard time or was frustrated with something, the show said, if you go do something you're really good at for 15 minutes, you will be remotivated. And so now he is much more likely to do that than if I told him to. And it's something as simple as going to shoot baskets for 15 minutes and coming back to it. So, yeah, good tips.
The question, how difficult is it? I think the freedom that just to wake up every day and say, I get to do all these things, most days have something really fun, is totally worth all the hassle. But I kind of boiled it down to how I de-stress from my 3 most common difficulties throughout the day. One is just mess. Did I mention I have 6 kids? They make a mess so fast. And when you're home in it more than you're not, and they're home in it more than not, there's just mess all the time. And so I really, truly have to put blinders on. In the morning, I might do dishes if I didn't do them the night before. But I try to not, just forget about it until right before my husband comes home from work. And then we all have that quick pickup. He's happy. I'm happier that it's eventually picked up, but just kind of have to decide what that routine is going to be. Otherwise, I'd be walking around all day going, how did this get here? How did that get here? My second one is, I jokingly say, but for real, I eat in my teacher's lounge, up in my bedroom by myself. My kids make their own lunches. I grab my lunch and I go upstairs for that 30, 40 minutes. And I'm a huge advocate for teachers taking that break in the middle of the day. I need my Diet Coke and my episode of currently the Gilmore Girls, whatever it is, that just makes you laugh and gets you back going. And that leads to my third point, is just, if you don't own a pair of Bluetooth headphones, I swear by them. Because then in the afternoon, when you're doing your chores around the house, and basically our hands are just always full, they keep me sane and keep me able to do things, during the afternoon, and at sometimes just pretend like I can't hear the kids.
That's how I stay stress-free.
Oh, that's fabulous. Okay, the other question we had was, what do you wish you had told yourself when you began homeschooling? I'm going to ask if anybody has a really stellar question or answer to this that you just can't wait to tell everyone, and if not, then we'll wrap it up. So anybody? Okay, Karen has one, and
mine would be relax. You don't have to do every single problem in the book. I remember when I was doing the spelling, I was like, okay, we have to do this on Monday, and we have to do this on Tuesday, and we have to do this on the Friday. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If we get faster, we can just do it on Tuesday. We don't have to wait till Friday to do something. And so that's what I would tell myself. I didn't have to do all the math problems in the book. Didn't have to get the very last page of the book.
I'd say mine is just, it's the process is more important than the product. I hated throwing away all those little kids' art projects that we all work so hard on and sanity on. And again, we work and work and work and still not get something right. But that process is more of an education than even what the end product is.
And mine would be, every child in your family is different. And you will find that out now. If you are homeschooling, you'll find out how different they are. And that's really neat, because you'll get to work with them in their own way.
And I'll just add mine, since we're all doing this anyway, real quick. All right, mine is that I think learning, I wish I would have thought right from the start that learning was more about just the rhythm of life. I wish I would have not called it school. I wish I would not have said it's time to start school. I wish it would have been more of a, all right, let's everybody get out their literature books and let's read. And isn't this so cool that we're learning about this? And then as we're making lunch, isn't it so cool that we're learning how to put a sandwich together, right? And just make learning something that's happening all day long in all these different forms, and not keep school in such a narrow definition.
Ditto to all of that. Okay. All right, we have kept you nearly long enough. I just want to few things here, and then we'll wrap up. I know we're going over our 8:30, so I apologize. Quickly, just a thank you to all of our panelists and the supporting people who have offered to help me. I really have appreciated all the help in putting this on, and I hope it's been a help to you. We have some other representatives from organizations here, so I'd like you, I'm just going to see your name and I have you stand. I'm not going to have you can go stand by the resources table if you have literature there or whatever afterwards. So we have Diana Ward from the Michigan Christian Homeschool Network. Can you please stand? Oh, there she is in the red shirt over there. So it's a statewide network, and they can help you find support groups, and especially if you're watching online and you are not in the Midland area, it's a really great resource for the broader Michigan. But they do a lot of stuff, so go check out her literature. Jennifer Clayton from Classical Conversations. Okay, Jennifer's back there in the blue and the teal and the blue shirt there. Classical Conversations is just a 1 day a week fee-based program, and they teach kids, and then they kind of go off and do some of their work afterwards on that. It's a really great program. Rochelle